I'm back from Call of Duty Next over in LA after playing the brand new version of Warzone, which will be releasing in Season 1 later this year. After the release of Modern Warfare 3, there'll be a short break before Warzone fully integrates over, bringing all of the systems of Modern Warfare 3 into Warzone and transferring the game into a much better place. Now today I wanted to go over all of the changes that are coming to Warzone, every single major and minor change that is going to be presented as part of the integration, and talk about how much of a difference it actually made, because it's all well and good hearing about these changes on paper, but whether or not they actually make a gameplay difference is something else. And thankfully, after about 5 hours of Warzone gameplay, I can finally talk about the differences that I felt and how I think all of these changes have created a Warzone environment with a far greater emphasis on fun and dynamic gameplay, which kind of made most of us fall in love with it during the Verdansk era. There were just moments in this version of Warzone that I don't remember having in Modern Warfare 2, and moments of action, fun, and chaos that I can only really ever recall occurring back in the days on the original Verdansk. So the first major change is obviously the new movement system, which I would call a middle ground between Modern Warfare 2019 and Modern Warfare 2 2022. And the reason I call it a middle ground is that it's got the fastness and responsiveness that you would expect out of Modern Warfare 2019, but without broken elements of it. For example, character hitboxes are working properly, which was a huge issue back in the day in Verdansk, and it also doesn't reset things like tac sprint, allowing for a cheesily fast movement. So I feel like they've really hit a sweet spot here. The biggest noticeable change was just the general fluidity. I was no longer fumbling around with weapon animations, reloads, cocking back my gun. I was no longer fumbling around with, after mantling over a wall, how long it would take me to aim down sight. And all of those delays and things that slow you down in Modern Warfare 2 and the current iteration of Warzone effectively were completely removed. You know, you could jump over a wall and very quickly aim down sight. You could use different flanking routes and go from zipline to zipline and very quickly be back in the game, ready to fight again. There was a period of time during the gameplay loop where I went from like a horizontal zipline to a vertical zipline to crouch sliding to aiming down sight, and it was just one fluid motion. There was none of these delays, none of these issues, and none of these problems that really put bricks on your feet in the current iteration of Warzone. There are still a few places where the delay is a little too long, and I think that will get changed. Effectively, Sledgehammer and Raven Software at the start of the entire presentation said that movement was a big focus for them, and I feel as though if there's something that people don't appreciate, it probably will find its way smoothed out by the time the game releases. Speaking of movement, we have the new horizontal ziplines alongside the vertical ziplines. These work really well. I wish they were a little bit faster in places, but they offer more routes onto buildings. So now you have elevators, vertical zips, horizontal zips, and of course stairwells and ladders, meaning that most buildings are super accessible, and defending and attacking those buildings is going to be more of a fight and less of a camp fest. I really disliked in the original Warzone that if you camped a rooftop on a high-rise or an apartment block, you'd basically won the game because there was no ways to attack it. That's completely changed here. Even the tallest high-rise in the game has 2 cranes that you can use to flank onto it, multiple vertical ziplines up the side of the building, and 2 elevators, meaning that these buildings are all super approachable and nobody is permanently safe. And finally, on the topic of movement, stims are back in the game. If you use a stim in the game, you get faster movement, and there are also new perk systems which will allow for faster movement in certain scenarios. So for those of you out there who really appreciate fluid movement, quick movement, and the ability to challenge opponents from around corners, jump shots, drop shots, this game is really ticking a lot of boxes. The next set of changes I felt focused on fun, and there was a lot here that just made the gameplay more dynamic. I've already spoken about horizontal ziplines, but those are a good example of how they've injected something that's a little bit different, but adds more layers of meaningful gameplay to the game that creates more fun and chaotic moments. So another great example of this is the introduction of a movable train. Now we've had trains in every single map for Warzone so far, but this is the first time that the train is controllable. Not only can you speed it up and slow it down, you can chuck it into reverse, make it accelerate, or just pull the brakes entirely, meaning that you can effectively have a moving point of interest. And you can do some really cool things with this, because it does of course come with a buy station, and you can effectively have a mobile kill squad where you could just run around the map using the train, and then eventually park up the train in one of the final circles if the circle aligns. We did this in one of our games where we actually parked the train on a bridge, turning it into effectively a fortified position. And this is just a new layer of dynamicness that you don't really see in COD these days, and it was something that I felt just really added a bit of spice and variety that I really appreciated. On the topic of fun, there is a brand new gulag which felt very well laid out and felt a little bit like the original gulag showers, which I think most people will appreciate given how poor the Al Mazrah gulag has been currently. It was a really good gulag that allowed for aggressive gameplay, corner-to-corner gameplay, and again, really felt like the OG showers that we came to appreciate, and actually felt like a lot like the last gulag from Caldera. But even with this, they've added another element of fun. There are LTMs that can randomly occur in the gulag, for example, a night vision variant, which makes you fight in the dark, variant which is fully loaded and gives rare weapons to both players, giving them an opportunity to get out of the gulag with a good loadout system with them, and try something a little bit different from the conventional gulag weapons. And then finally, one where they drop tons and tons of cash, where there's a risk reward for you searching around for cash, and if you win your gulag and collect loads of cash, you've got easy buybacks on your teammates on the way out. And even the tiebreaker for the gulag has been improved to be more fun. There is now a central zipline in the middle of the map, and if you manage to get on the zipline and escape from the top of the gulag, you end up winning the game instead of doing a flag capture. Not only does this mean there'll be less emphasis on random captures or just waiting out a specific objective, but it also means that you have the opportunity to stop an escape or pull off a clutch escape in a way that I think is much more interesting than an objective in the middle of the floor. They've also brought back and changed some of the contracts in the game to make them more fun and more dynamic as well. The big game bounty is back, which does of course offer you an advanced UAV when you kill the opponent who is on the big game bounty, and the Champions quest is not only back in the game, but you can now steal the quest if you kill the squad who is using it, meaning that the Champions quest is now a more dynamic element of the game and adds another layer of gameplay. So throughout the entire experience, whether it was the train, the LTMs, the horizontal zip lines, the contracts, there was a real layer of dynamism that I felt they added to the game. There was a real focus on trying to add lots of variety to the game and trying to have every round feel just that little bit more different in a way that spiced up the game and made you want to carry on playing. I think a lot of you will agree that although Al Mazrah is a good map, it sometimes feels a little bit sterile or a little bit conventional in terms of what you can expect. It doesn't feel like there's the ability to challenge squads and do cool plays and make those big moves and clutch plays that you could make on people in the original Verdansk. Only now in this new iteration of Warzone with this new map Urzikstan do I really feel like that they've kind of gone back to that, and I felt like there were so many opportunities for me as a player to pull off a cool move, to use a horizontal zipline and drop down on an opponent, or try something a little bit mad in terms of hardcore parkour. And I really appreciated that whilst I was over in LA playing the game. And finally, one of the bigger changes is quality of life. And I was actually really impressed with this when we were at the event because it felt like this was such an important topic. And we had Ted Timmons, who was the head of Raven Software, who said that they really wanted the new Warzone experience that they're going to have not only be different, new, and have lots of content, but actually be an upgrade over what we currently have. So not only are there new perks, which we will talk about, but there's been a huge number of quality of life changes that I would argue are fairly popular that the community has wanted. For example, not only are stims back, there is also the fact that Ghost now only works when you're moving, meaning that players who like to camp in buildings using Ghost will no longer be rewarded for sitting in a building. Red dots on the minimap are back, which honestly, when I was playing Al Mazrah, I felt like I didn't need it, but having played both Al Mazrah and Verdansk these days, I actually do feel like it will create more intensity in Warzone, and probably is for the best. There is now new ammo slots in your backpack, meaning that you won't have to fumble around with ammo anymore. It will just simply be something that is part of your inventory that you don't have to look for anymore. It's there, you automatically pick it up, and whether you decide to switch weapons in late game or decide to find a gun on the floor, you will have ammunition available as soon as you do that, meaning less fumbling around with loot and more playing the game. The gas mask in Warzone is now manually equipped, meaning that you will no longer have situations where you end up missing shots because you're pulling on a gas mask animation. And the gas mask actually counters tear gas grenades now as well, and can be utilized at any point in the game. And you will always have a pistol. You will always have 3 weapons in the new Warzone, meaning that whether you're in the water, on a ladder, or happen to be in a situation where a pistol is necessary, the game will pull one out for you, and you'll no longer have these situations where somebody with an automatic machine pistol is farming lots of people in the water with SMGs. And speaking of the water, not only is it still in the game and there's seemingly less of it on this new map, but it's actually super clear now. You can see opponents in the water quite clearly, and it means that this is going to be, yet again, another element of the gameplay that people found frustrating, has been withdrawn. You can see people, it isn't hard to shoot them anymore, and although the water will still be a viable escape option, it just means that it won't be as cheesily overpowered as it is right now, where you can effectively completely disappear. And I think if I was to summarize all of the quality of life changes, it felt like I was fumbling around with the game and the inventory far less than I was in the previous Warzone 2 iteration. I wasn't really caring about my inventory, I wasn't really caring about what I did and didn't have on me, I wasn't really caring about what weapons I had around me at the time. I was just able to fluidly go through, pick things up, keep moving, and actually pay attention more to the game and less about what third kill streak I had in my fourth backpack slot. Now, whilst you can still do those things, the fact that ammunition is no longer a concern meant that there's just more inventory slots. There's more plates, there's more killstreak options, there's more revive options, and it just made the gameplay feel a bit more snappy and responsive, and feel like we were focusing more on the gameplay and less on the intricate details of the game. There was also just a huge release in terms of there being less frustrating elements in the game, like the gas mask, less frustrating elements in the game, like not being able to shoot an opponent underwater. All of those little things right now that really annoy you about the current Warzone have effectively been taken away. And finally, we have the new perks. Now, Call of Duty will not be using the equipment system in Modern Warfare 3 in Warzone, and the reason for that is because in Warzone we already have vests, we already have perk packages, and if you were to start adding equipment to the fray, you would have to remove all the perks, you'd have to throw all the equipment in, you'd have to have 2 different types of vests, you'd have to find boots, gloves, and all sorts, and it would just become a bit of a ground loot mess. I honestly feel as though not moving over to that system actually makes more sense for the current iteration of Warzone, and certain things like having silent footsteps are definitely not something you would want in a Call of Duty Warzone experience anyway. But on top of that, they've added some perks, including some you already know, and lots of new perks that I felt were really good additions. For example, Combat Scout has returned, and whilst I personally am not a fan of Combat Scout, there's lots of other perks that I feel will make it less of a priority pick. For example, there is now a new perk called Shrouded, which means that you drop smoke when you're immediately downed, giving you an opportunity to be revived rather than being instantly deleted. There is a new one called Irradiated, which allows you to move faster and take less damage in the gas. So if you're somebody who likes making clutch gas plays or edge plays, you have a perk that suits your playstyle. And finally, there's one called Resolute, which means that you actually move faster as a player when you take damage in the game. So if you're getting sniped at, shot at, or full beamed across the open, you actually move quicker. Now, of course, with these new perks, the devil is in the detail, and hopefully none of them are too overpowered or too boring, but they actually just felt like a good variety mix in terms of introductory perks that could make the gameplay a little bit more catered towards your own playstyles, whether you're a run and gunner, whether you're somebody who plays on edge zone, whether you're somebody who's a bit more of an intel player, likes to spot people, get people targeted, so on and so forth. But if I was to summarize all of these changes and everything that I played whilst I was in LA, the game A felt fluid, B felt like there was less frustration. I wasn't fumbling around animations, I wasn't fumbling around my inventory, I wasn't having randomly annoying things like gas mask animations or the inability to shoot somebody in the water occur to me. So, fluidity, less annoyances, and finally, just fun. Just simple, plain fun. The idea that I can use a horizontal zipline, jump off of the horizontal zipline, ledge mantle onto a building below, and then utterly demolish a squad was such a refreshing experience. This was the kind of dynamic, fun, and enjoyable Warzone experience that made me really enjoy the days in Verdansk. Although I personally didn't like Verdansk as a map, it was the kind of gameplay loop and the differences in variety in gameplay that made me really appreciate Warzone. And I feel like all of that is coming back now. And the final change, which I've saved the best for last really, because it's a change that, matters to me, is that the return of one-shot sniping is confirmed. You can one-shot snipe somebody in this game, and I actually feel like it's in a pretty balanced place. And the reason I say that is because players can move really quickly, they can slide cancel, they can dive, they can zip around the map really fast, And if you do happen to down them, they might end up using the new perk Shrouded, meaning that you won't necessarily be able to get the finish. I feel like there'll still be a little bit of a balancing act to do here in terms of bullet velocity to lead time, but if they can get that nailed in perfectly, they'll have a satisfying one-shot sniping system that doesn't punish regular players for not using a sniper, and allows them to utilize movement to effectively get away from them. All in all, I think I had a really good time with the new systems in the new Warzone, and I'm looking forward to showing you more of it later this year. If you guys enjoyed this video, please drop a like, make sure you subscribe for more of this content, and if you have any questions, ask them below, and I'll do my best to answer. As always folks, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.